Hello, hope all is well. So today we're going to be looking at neural amp modeling and specifically the process to capture an amp. So as you might have seen last week, Neural DSP released their Nano Cortex, which really simplifies this whole art of capturing tones in a really easy and simple way. At least that's what I understood from looking at demos and videos on the unit, in the sense that you have a standalone unit that you can plug in to an amp, and then you take the output, say from a load box or something like that, back into the unit, and from there you can capture essentially the amp tone that you're trying to profile. So most importantly, it starts with the signal chain. So the way I look at this is that the actual capture itself can only be as good as, say, how good your reamp signal path is, if that makes sense. So how good is the actual reamping signal path from the door into the amp and then back out from the amp or the mic, whatever it is that you're trying to capture, back into the door. And this was the first hurdle that I run into. So in terms of signal path, I'll just go over it real quickly. So I'm running out from my RME Babyface Pro into a Behringer ADA8200, which is an ADAT extension, if you will. So it has an extra 8 ins and 8 outs, which I can use. I'm using one of the extra outputs from the ADAT interface to go into the Radial X amp reamp. And that's going to probably my favorite boost for metal tones, which is the Lichtlaerm audio Aesahaettr, which I can now pronounce. I'll link a video that I did on that up here. And from there it's going to the amp, and then the amp is going to a Aesahaettr reactive load, and that's coming back into the interface through the Behringer ADA8200 through one of the channels. So this is the first sort of difficulty I had. So the Radial reamp box is, it's a solid piece of kit, but try as I might, I just couldn't seem to get sufficient levels going into the reamp box and then back out into the amp. So I got close enough with really boosting the sort of outputs from the interface into my ADA8200 as far as it would go without clipping. And that definitely helped a lot. And then I also cranked the outputs on the reamp box. But it still wasn't quite to the same level as it was when plugging the guitar straight into the amp. And that's where, to me, it gets difficult. So I added the Lichtlaerm audio boost within that to get the signal pretty much to where the guitar would be, or a guitar DI signal would be when going out towards an amp. So there's definitely a noticeable difference between the two. So plugging into the amp is, well, it's the ideal, of course, and the feel is there and things sound as they should. And then when comparing that to, say, going into the DI and then through the interface and then out into the amp, obviously it's going to be different because we're going through other devices to get to the amp. But even though like the levels are pretty much the same, the sort of frequency of the guitar, or the signal at least, hitting the amp is kind of different. So I feel that, the lows are kind of lacking, or the width of the signal just isn't quite the same. And my concern is that because of that, also the NAM capture that I'll be doing will suffer in the process. Now this of course can be down to user error, but I'm fairly well versed in sort of how my DAW works, my interface and things like that. And I even tried different outputs. You know, I even tried my FM3 as an interface just to make sure that I can supply enough level going into the Radial X-amp reamp. Yep, I got that right. And no matter what I did, despite supplying enough level to the point of pretty much almost clipping outputs, the level coming out of the reamp box was never the same as, say, the guitar straight in. And I think because of that, the reamping process or the sound going through the amp would suffer, essentially. So I could stop the video there and wait till I get a different reamp box, which I think would be a better representation, at least of captured tones. But I thought I'd still show the process in this video. So if you're wondering about doing the same thing and what you might need and things like that, this might come in handy. I'll put the links in the description, but here's sort of a really easy walkthrough of how to capture and train your NAMM amp capture for use later on in the software. And it's sort of easy mode trainer, and it's basically as simple as downloading a reamp signal. You reamp your gear, recording it of course, you upload your 2 files, and then you train it on different parameters that you can set. More epochs would be more, I guess, precision in the capture, if that's one way of looking at it. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. This is quite new to me. You can add metadata to that, and it's as simple as that. So you upload 2 WAV files, you hit start here, and there you go. I thought I'd do the hard mode as well, which is setting up NAMM locally. And that's really quite involved, I find, but there's a really good video by Jason on the subject, which has really comprehensive details and a walkthrough on how to do it. You do have to install extra things to do this. There's Anaconda that's involved, there's Git that's involved, and I think NVIDIA CUDA is a good idea to add as well, but I think it'd probably work without that. And then there's a lot of command line prompt style stuff. And by command line prompt, I mean this kind of fun stuff involved to get to the NAMM trainer, which is this here. And then from there, it's quite straightforward. This is basically the same as what you would see, here, in the sense that, you know, you're uploading 2 files, and then with those 2 files, you're training a NAMM amp capture. So the way I've got the DAW set up is that on track 1, I have the reamp signal that's going out through my ADAT device into the reamp box that's going into the amp. The amp is then coming back through the SIR reactive load onto a separate track that I have below. And all you do is you set it up so that you record on the second track, you press play, and you wait. It's about 3 minutes 10 until this signal has been processed, and then you render only this track. I mean, you can mute the other track if you want, or just solo this track, or only select this track to render. And the important thing here is that you render it with 48,000 hertz, and it's in mono, which is really important, and then 24-bit. The name of the file, if you're using the online trainer, you should set it to output as output.wav or WAV. And for the local trainer, which is a bit more involved to set up, you can essentially call it whatever you want. And once you've got the 2 files set up, you can either use the online trainer, which is here, or you can use the local trainer if you spend the time, of course, to set it up. So I'll show the training process using the online trainer, as that's probably the easiest way of doing it. So within this window, we'll open up over here the file browser, and then we'll upload the 2 files we made. So we'll upload this reamp signal that we want, and then we'll also upload the output from the reamping that we did into this folder. And it's quite easy. You just click on this button here, and then you upload both the V3 and then the output. You can upload both of these at once if you like. Hit OK. And so now you can see that both these files are within the file browser here. And then it's just a case of going down here and selecting epochs and things like that for the model that you're going to be making. I'll keep things as standard here, so 100 epochs, and then I'll just name this. So I decided to fill in the metadata a bit more, but then it's just a case of hitting this sort of play button here. We'll leave epochs at 100, standard auto, and then we'll hit run anyway, and then it will start to run. So it takes a bit of time depending on how many epochs you have it set to. And you'll see that it's executing code and then it does all this stuff. And here you can see the check between the two, between like the reamp signal and then the output file to make sure everything's all right. That checked out fine. And then now it's going into the epoch training, which you can see here. So this takes a bit of time depending on how many epochs you've set it to. But it's a good opportunity, as it's all online. You can open up a different tab, watch a YouTube video, grab a coffee, look outside, or stare blankly at a wall for about 5 to 6 minutes. So there we go. So it finished the training, and you'll get some statistics at the end here as well. For example, so the error to signal ratio, how long it took, and then this graph with the ESR, which is the error to signal ratio here. It then puts the actual NAM capture up here within exported models. If it doesn't show up, you either wait a bit, or I think you can hit refresh and it will appear. And then you go into here, the version 0, and there you go, there's your NAM capture. You then hit these 3 dots, and then you can download it, and then load it into your favorite NAM plugin. So hopefully that gave you a good overview of the process or what's involved in making a NAM capture. As said, this is part 1 of well, ongoing series, I guess, where I'm trying to get the best capture of that amp. As said at the start, I think that the weakest link in this case is actually the reamp procedure that's going out towards the amp, as I feel that that doesn't really replicate the sound of my guitar the way that I think it should. And that's the next thing that I'll be looking at in the coming weeks or months, I guess, is getting a better reamp signal flow going so that I can make a better or the best possible capture of the amp. And then also exploring things like more epochs or more detail within the training mode of the neural amp model capture. So now our last thing is just a food for thought, and this is specifically with the neural DSP Nano Cortex in mind. Now, you know, there's a lot of talk about things that were maybe left out or features that would be nice. Effects loop is maybe one. And there are other things like, lack of a drive block ahead of the capture block or the profile block within the unit, or even compressor. I think that's something that really should be there, especially if you're looking at certain tones. A compressor can be really useful. But ultimately, what we're looking at, for me at least, especially having gone through this whole reamp procedure, which I will say has been a bit of a nightmare, especially trying to get the levels right and then trying different outputs, disconnecting my studio monitors and the subwoofer and things like that, just to try and get the levels right into the reamp box. And admittedly, it might be more to do with the reamp box and how that's set up compared to, say, something else, and that's what I'm looking forward to try. But if I compare that to, say, an all-in-one unit where, I have two things to plug in, 2 or 3 things to plug in and set up, and then I start a capture device on the process itself, and within 4 or 5 minutes, however long it takes, I've got a pretty accurate or a very accurate profile of an amp that I'm trying to do. So the whole process that I've been trying to set this up and do training and things like that, that will be done within 5 minutes. And I think, for me at least, that sounds like quite an appealing proposition. Now we can get into the nitty-gritty of, well, what's a more accurate profile or not? And that's why this is part 1 of an ongoing series of me trying to get the best capture possible, at least through neural amp modeling of my VHT amp. I might check out Nano Cortex at some point down the line, also Tonocracy and things like that, as those are things that I'm quite interested in trying out, but we'll see how we get along. In any case, I need a break now because this really fried my brain cells yesterday evening trying to get levels right and things like that. And yeah, there's maybe other things to do in life that are a bit more enjoyable than messing around with cables and trying to get signals right. So in any case, thanks a lot for watching, and if you like this kind of content, please drop a like and subscribe, as it really helps me out. Thanks.